Hello, and welcome to the In the Beginning Podcast, episode 22, Shoulda, Coulda, Woulda, a conversation on alternative history. It is our goal to bring indie authors and story lovers together through discussion, reviews, and unique topic segments. Twice a month, we introduce readers to an independently published novel, and then the following week, we discuss a unique topic ripped right from the story you heard, with the author and you, the listener. This week's discussion is brought to you by Shirts by Sarah. Stop by shirtsbysarah.com to purchase a cozy sweater, shirt, or hoodie to be your reading companion. There are styles and graphics for everyone. Last week, we introduced readers to LS Bassen's alternative history, Summer of the Long Knives, and ended just as our heroine Liesl was recovering from a brutal attack by a group of German stormtroopers. What did you think about the beginning of this tale, Marie?
The very beginning of it was kind of like reading out of a history textbook, so it was a little bit tedious and boring to get through. But after that, it went from one extreme to another.
Yeah, I thought, in the beginning it was a little textbooky, but a lot of times with alternative history, they have to bring the reader back to the time and show where the facts and the fiction are going to start to mix. So all that stuff did happen, and then where Liesl gets attacked, I believe, is where it's going to fan out.
Kind of the two paths go in two separate directions.
Exactly. Just like a timeline. Once you change something from the past, you got to follow a different path, but the other one's still going off. Mm-hmm. Which is a great way to look at it. A lot of people in their reviews talked about how it's a parallel universe or alternate history, which it is an alternative history, but to be able to take something, such a strong topic of our history, and be able to rewrite it, I think is just an amazing thing to do. Mm-hmm. Speaking of reviews, let's read a couple of them.
Okay. Joan says, what if Hitler had been stopped early on? Is history the story of what was or what could have been? Does art reflect the idea or the real? Explore these thoughts in a page-turner set in Berlin in the 1930s. Beautifully written, the text will transport you to that time in a parallel universe. Don't miss it.
I agree. It was beautifully written. M.R. Campbell wrote, "The world we know is the world we know. But in another universe, Abraham Lincoln wasn't assassinated at the Ford Theater, and Adolf Hitler was assassinated via one plot or another. And just maybe a young girl named Liesl Gantz, who was assaulted by brown shirt stormtroopers and subsequently sought her revenge, pulled the trigger. In the what-if world of alternative history, The Summer of the Long Knives is at once a fictional thriller and a chilling exploration of the German summer of 1934.
Philip K. Okay, so maybe alt history is a simplistic way of describing this book. It reads like a fever dream one might have after reading too many personal experiences of Germany during the Nazi era. That being said, it is very hard to put down owing to the well-fleshed characters and onrushing plot. Just loved it."
Kathleen K. said, "This is a what-if type of story that makes a person wonder. If this had happened, look at all the lives that would have been saved in the next decade. Maybe there would have been no World War II. I don't usually read speculative fiction, but I did enjoy this short little book. The story was richly imagined, and the characters were very believable. Give this one a try if you're interested in this era of history." And I have to agree, if you're a fan of World War II or Nazi Germany, or even if you just like alternative history, this is a very well written book. I almost said well-read book. It should be a well-read book. I had, sometimes I have trouble reading stories that are just not written for me. It was like this one was written exactly how my brain needed it so that I could read it. With all the reviews focused on alternative history, I thought it would be a great topic to discuss with the author. Due to an entire household of indie beginning illnesses, we did this interview over email, and Marie will be reading LS Bassen's responses this week. Alternative fiction is a popular genre for story lovers, yet many authors find it a difficult genre to write. Did you have any concerns when you began writing Summer of Long Knives?
Truly, I wasn't thinking in genre alt fiction terms when I began researching writing Summer of Long Knives. The novel's actual origin was the result of watching a documentary about the 20th century. I can't remember it. And myself question, if I could change one event, what would it be? It came down to Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and the Holocaust. not particularly interesting to retrace my thought steps, but I figured while World War II was inevitable, the Holocaust could have been prevented by the removal of Hitler. Research encouraged me that there was a particular moment when he was vulnerable.
And I think it's wonderful that we could go back and brainstorm different ways and imagine a world that was a little bit different, because that part of history is just, I mean, you can't go back, and it's hard to say what you would and wouldn't do, but that's one that needs to be taken out. The next question we posed was, with Nazi Germany being such a major historical period in time, what tips or tricks did you utilize to keep fact and fiction from flowing too far from one another?
I remember wrestling a long time with 1930s newspaper articles to imitate newspaper-style content of the time. Imagination played the greatest role here. I was seeing the characters in the place, time, peril, listening to them, following them. They knew where they were. It was their reality. So I don't think I have any tips or tricks. I was just following these people and trying to keep up.
So what are your thoughts on reader knowledge? Do you feel that the average reader is willing to suspend disbelief to be entertained?
Good question. I've always found it's better to have higher than lower expectations for an audience. I really think it depends on the characterization and situation. If a reader cares about a character's problems, he or she will want to know what happens. I know I do.
And this question I posed to the writers group on Facebook. And I'd like to take a moment to thank Sarah, Iana, Mark, Kenneth, and Sasha for joining the conversation. All of them agreed that readers will suspend disbelief, and that it is the author's job to, through character development and world building, a topic we discussed with Paul Grover in episode 17, shameless plug. But the examples given stem from like Harry Potter, still refuse to read it, to Marvel. I wonder more about factual events straight out of high school history books, where there really is a universal agreement of facts. And I know I have no problem reading a story and taking it for what it is. I can watch a movie and enjoy a movie based off a book without having it to have exactly what I understand that there's a difference. The movie can't have everything that the book can have. Mm-hmm. And alternative history is not going to be exactly like history. And it may not be anything like history. But do you think, Marie, that like the moon landing or Nazi Germany or
But the greatest example of an audience that had to kind of set aside what they already know and learn something new was Seth Grahame-Smith's Vampire Slayer about Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, but I seem to remember back then, even with that story, people were like, well, no, that didn't happen. And but on top of that, that was so fantastical because there's vampires. And in this one, there's not a spoiler, this is straight from the book blurb, but that she's going to get, Liza, our heroine, is going to get psychic powers, which helps bring the fiction into it. But I think of things like where I think Harry Turtledove, I can't remember the story, but it just switched a little bit and then set it off in another path. And I'm always worried doing something like that. There's going to be some fan out there that is just going to be like, no, that couldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they're always, no matter what you write. I mean, I write science fiction and I'm constantly told that will never happen.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. Back to the questions. Does writing alternative history allow you as the author to change history if even for a brief moment in time? Are there any other historical moments you wish or even plan to rewrite?
That question puts a smile on my face. Since I wrote the novel, it has changed my view of history, and it has led me to read other writers' alternatives. They often go dark, dystopic, while I incline optimistic. I figure, paraphrasing Pascal Wagner, it's a way to bet. But I haven't focused on the past since writing Summer of the Long Knives. Indie publishers have brought out 2 story collections, Lives of Crime, They're Not Mysteries, and last year, Show Folk and Stories, which are contemporary fiction. I finished another novel, New Marwa, which was twice contracted by different indie publishers, but both deals fell through, alas. Still searching. It's Coda Chapter, which I added after the first deal disappointment. has been published twice as a standalone short story.
And I'll add the link to that right in the show notes. If you could rewrite anything in your own career as an author, what would it be?
I bet that's a question we ask ourselves a lot. Long ago, I wrote a novel about researchers in the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. That one sometimes nags me. I prefer to rewrite short stories, actually. A novel is such a different journey. I've been working, taking notes, writing parts, for 5 years on what I call Blue Monkeys, a decipherment of Linear A, a contemporary realistic Atlantis associated novel. So hopefully that's next rather than rewrite. Thanks so much for asking these questions.
So, Marie, what's the verdict? Was this a gripping beginning?
After the first couple of paragraphs, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought it. Every book they have to go back through, and the first couple of paragraphs are never the most exciting in the world. But yeah, I agree. This was very well. I want to know what's going to happen when Laszlo gets out of the hospital. How about can we rewrite history even if only to live there for a brief period of time?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that's what we all do in our writing, is try to change something in our past, even if we're writing in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as you, the listener, what are your thoughts? Leave a comment wherever you found this podcast. I'll find it. We would also be grateful if you would rate and review this show while you are there. Your reviews are a wonderful way to support this show, and also a way for us to keep bringing you the content you want to listen to. Summer of the Long Knives is available for purchase on Amazon. I would like to thank Shirts by Sarah for supporting this show, and also thank LS Bassen for taking the time to be a part of the Indie Beginning podcast. I am your host, Benjamin Frankie.
And I'm your host, Marie Frankie, asking everyone to read more books,
Be the best possible you,
and simply enjoy this wonderful life.
Now that's teamwork. Thanks for listening.